Hello, everyone. My name is Alexander Lucard, and I am an HMIS administrator for Montgomery County. In today's training, we're going to look at the daily unit report. Now, there are two ways to get to the daily unit report. The first is to go over to all of these buttons, click Reports, and then go to the daily unit report. Click on it, and it takes you here. Otherwise, you can click on the arrow by reports and choose daily unit report here. Either way takes you to the same spot. Doesn't matter, it's your own personal preference. So what is the daily unit report for? Well, this report is most often used for emergency/low barrier shelters in order to make sure that they have a copy of their bed list for each night. Using this report will allow you to generate a digital copy of your bed list for each night in the date range that you choose. Now, the reason we have this report is because ShelterPoint, where we log emergency clients in and out of the programs, only shows the most recent changes. So for example, if you put in one day, that the latest day that you put in, that's all you're going to be able to see in ShelterPoint. But you might want to go back and see what happened 3 weeks ago. Or maybe you get a subpoena and you have to prove the client John Doe was at your location on April 15th. You'd run the report and you'd take a look and you'd make sure that this matches your paper copy. This is because if something is not in HMIS, it does not count. And that includes legally. So whatever you have on paper, this bed list trumps it, even if it is incorrect, which is why you want to make sure that your bed lists are correct for each night of your operation. And the only way to do that is to run the daily unit report. And so that's what we're going to look at here today. For non-low barrier shelters, like transitional programs, rapid rehousing programs, or HIP programs, you can run this report to just check on who is currently on your ShelterPoint bed list, or a look at the changes for your ShelterPoint bed list. But it's not as effectual for you as it is for an emergency shelter. Programs like Street Outreach and PATH that don't do ShelterPoint, you don't need it. You don't have to worry about it. So you don't use ShelterPoint at all, and so this report won't work for you. So let's go into this doing an emergency shelter so you can see the pros of using this report. Now, here are your report options. Let's go through each one. Provider. Because I'm a system administrator for Montgomery County, my default provider is Montgomery County Continuum of Care. But let's pick an emergency shelter instead. We're going to do the men's emergency shelter year round. And we're going to do it for the month of April. So as you can see, our start date is April 1st, our end date is April 30th. This is going to grab everyone for April 2021, all 30 days. And then we have our check-in, check-out filter. Now, I always leave it at all, and that's because it will pull everyone. If you do units in use, it will only show people that were there for the full 24 hours. If you do new check-ins, it will only do check-ins. If you do check-outs, it will only show you the people that checked out. All is a lot more user-friendly, and it lets you look at everything at once. Sort by. I always do check-in date, and we're going to see why. You can do client, gender, group ID, or one of the levels, but they're nowhere as helpful. So I just always leave this as all and sort by check-in date. And then I click build report. Now, the report's building and you see how quickly it took. If you have a very large shelter, like say 150 to up to 300 people, and you do a large range, it's going to take a little bit longer to run. But for a shelter of this size, about 35 people, it's not going to take too long, even for a month. So let's take a look. First up, your unit stays. We have a drop-down menu. We can pick any day from our date range, and it will automatically go to that. First day, previous, next, and last day, it will let you move through these days if you don't want to use the drop-down menu. Now, there are 3 parts to this report. The first is right here, and it's going to show you your entire month. It's going to show you how many people are in your program for that 24-hour period, along with their gender. So for example, on this program, April 1st, they had a total of 34 people. On April 2nd, it dropped down to 33. It stayed 33 on the 3rd, dropped down or stayed on 33 for the 4th, dropped down to 32 for the 5th, went up to 34 for the 6th, and so on. We can see the ups and downs and the flows. Now, this part of the report is helpful for a couple different reasons. First, you're looking for any large changes, large increases or large decreases. If we see a pretty large one, and as you know your program, you'll know what large means. Large is going to be subjective based on how many people are normally served in your program. But if we see a large increase, it might mean that we forgot to check some people out. If we see a large decrease, maybe we accidentally checked out too many people. And so we just use these numbers to go, yep, you do a quick eye check and make sure that that looks more or less right. The other thing that you are looking for is large stretches where you have the same exact number. Now it's okay, this isn't necessarily bad, but what we're looking for is any large stretches just to make sure that we didn't forget to do a day or two. Again, depending on the size of your shelter and the influx and outflux of clients into your program, you'll know if this looks weird or not. If you are a 380 person program and you don't have any changes for 2 weeks, that's going to be odd. While a program of 20 people might not have changes for 2 weeks because those people are pretty set in stone and staying at that emergency shelter. Again, there is no hard rule of thumb. It is all subjective, and you will know as you use this report what is good and what is bad for your program. You will be able to track trends. If I was new here to this program, I would see the fact it was 32 people from the 16th to the 23rd for a week straight, and I would just go in and make sure that that looks right. Maybe cross-check it with the actual bed lists that were done and just make sure that those numbers are right. It's very possible they had a week without any check-ins or checkouts, but it's also something good to double check just to get in the practice of it. The second part of the report is the actual bed list itself. Now, when we created it, we had a choice by checking in by check-in date, client, gender, things like that. If you do by client, it's going to go by client ID. Right? And here we chose by the check-in date. And so what this does is it gives you a list of every single client that was there that night. See the whole list? We can see their floor, their room, their bed, their name and ID. Group ID won't really come up. It'll almost always be blank. Gender, date of birth, social security number, checked in and checked out as of 4/1/2021. So let's talk about some of these. You can use this to help check to make sure you have all the dates of birth and social security numbers in. If there's a blank, like right here with this client, you know you need to get the social security number for that client if possible. Checked in, we have it sorted by who's been here the longest, which is on 5/21/2018, to who's been there the least on 3/31/2021. Again, remember, this is the first day, April 1st. So what we are saying when we look at the checked in, we are verifying, we are affirming that this particular client has been at this program every single night since May 21st, 2018. So for almost 3 years straight, he has been in this program every night without a break. Remember, if they leave even for a night, you have to check them out and then check them back in when they come in. You cannot leave them on the bed list if they are not actually in your location. And so we can see, here's our check-ins and checkouts. And we can see, did someone check out on the 1st? No, 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 yes. But this is for the 1st, right? So what does this mean? Well, that's a really good question. And it shows the difference between how a computer works and how an actual shelter operates. So when we look at the 1st, right? The system is looking from midnight on April 1st, 2021 to 11:59 and 59 seconds on the 1st. It is looking for the actual time period of April 1st. However, what time do our shelters run? Usually from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., right? So if a person checks out on the 1st it means that they're checking out the morning of the 1st and weren't there for the night. Does that make sense? We've covered this in our enter and exit process and also our shelter point. So what we're looking for then is this lets us know who actually checked out the morning of the 1st. If they have no, it means they spent the night of the 1st. And if they have yes, it means they did not. It means they left that morning of the 1st. They were there the night of the 31st. And as we look, there's only one person who checked out. So we should have one checkout and we don't have any check-ins. And we can see the third part of the report shows us that as well. Here we go. Units in use, 34 in the 24-hour period with one checkout, which means that actually for the night of the 1st, there were 33 people. There were 33 people for the night of April 1st, because this includes the one person that checked out. 34 minus 1 is 33 for the night. And this is going to be for that 24-hour period compared to the 12-hour period most emergency shelters operate with that cross over from one day to the next. So there is that bit of carryover that you have to remember when you're using this report. Again, checked in just shows you everyone and the date that they came in. You've got their names, you've got their information, and all these different categories will help you to fix the gender, help you to fix the social security number and date of birth if it's missing. And it will also let you see how long a client has been in the program consecutively. Now, we're starting off on the 1st here, right? We can see April 1st, 2021. So what we're looking for then is how to move to a different day. Well, if we wanted to look at April 15th, we click April 15th on the dropdown, and now look, here's April 15th. And we can see on April 15th, there was 33 people with one checkout. And we can see that the person that checked out was this one right here. And we should be able to then, if we went into his account, see that he was there from April 10th to April 15th on his shelter stay record in his client account. And then this just lets you be able to print off, if you want, a bed list for the 15th. What the print button is for. And you can see it will print the entire report. And then you can always do next, next. You can see now we're on the 17th because we hit it twice. And what we're looking for, like I said, is just making sure, let's go down to the 16th, making sure that everything lines up correctly. So remember, we have that period where there's no changes. We can see on the 16th, there was one checkout, which we are pretty sure about, 33 to 32, right? And that implies we should have one check-in for the next day. No, 32. Now we're just going through and double checking everything. 0. And we can see there's no check-ins and checkouts. And then we would just go, and there we go, one person check-in and one checkout. So even though the number is staying the same here, as we go through it, we can see that there are changes. We can see we had a check-in and a checkout. The next day, the 20th, staying at 32. And that's all we're doing. We're using this report to double check that our numbers look right, that our clients look right, along with their check-in date, and any specifics and any trends. Again, if we see a long period where there aren't any changes, that's where we would want to go, hey, are we just not putting the bed lists in, or is there really no turnover? Because low barrier shelters tend to have the most turnover. So long periods of stretch without any is something worth questioning and just going, hey, is this right? We just want to make sure. And that's all there is for the daily unit report. This is super helpful for low barrier shelters. And as we can see, because it's taking shelter stays, if you're a HIP program, a rapid rehousing program, permanent supportive program, you can use this to generate a list of who was on your shelter stay list, which is also your housing move-in dates, and just make sure that that looks right to you as well. You can use it to find the gender, make sure you have social security numbers and date of birth, things like that. You can use it to find weird things, just like on this one, like how this client somehow has a social security number of 000000000, which probably isn't legitimate. And that's all we have for you today. This is the daily unit report. Again, the more you use it, the more you'll be able to find trends, and you'll be able to track what is the normal and what is abnormal for your program. Thank you for joining me today. I hope this was informative, and I look forward to doing more trainings with you in the future. Have a great day.